Okay, so picture this. A world where like one single entity is calling all the shots in the economy, right? Like telling every bakery how much bread to bake, deciding what features your new phone is going to have, that kind of thing. Kind of scary when you really think about it. And that's the problem Friedrich Hayek tackles in his book, The Fatal Conceit.
Yeah, it can be a pretty chilling thought when you frame it that way. And Hayek, he was a sharp economist. He really was. He went beyond just the surface level, the whole is socialism efficient
Right.
kind of thing. He dug deeper, arguing that this whole idea of central planning, it just fundamentally clashes with how human societies, they naturally grow and thrive.
Right, like it goes against the grain. So Hayek uses this phrase, the fatal conceit. What exactly did he mean by that?
So basically he's saying it's incredibly arrogant, this belief that we humans, even with all the best intentions in the world, could ever know enough to, like, design and manage something as crazy complex as an economy. And from the top down, no less. It's like he even compares it to that idea of intelligent design you hear in biology sometimes. This notion that something as intricate as life on Earth just had to be, deliberately planned out by some master planner.
Instead of just like evolving over time through natural processes.
Exactly.
Okay, so instead of having like one genius or even a massive committee trying to micromanage every little economic decision, Hayek thought it was way more effective to just let the system do its thing organically.
Precisely. And he makes this really compelling comparison between Darwinian evolution and how he saw a truly thriving economy.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Go on.
So just like species adapt and do their thing through this decentralized process of natural selection, he believed that free markets, with minimal government intervention, would allow for a kind of spontaneous order to emerge.
So you're saying that all these countless individuals, each making their own choices based on what they need, what they want, that would actually lead to a more successful, adaptable society than some central planner could ever dream up.
Exactly. And a key difference here is just the sheer volume of information involved. Like socialism, if you really boil it down, it assumes that some central planner could somehow have access to and make sense of all the information needed to make the best choices for millions, billions of people. Hayek saw that as totally impossible.
Yeah, it's like, good luck with that. It's like trying to manage a million lemonade stands from some corporate office, right? You'd never be able to keep up with like what people in each town actually want to drink, who's got the best prices, what the weather's doing. You get the idea.
That lemonade stand image, that's spot on, really drives home the limits of trying to control everything from the center. And Hayek, he takes this even further with a real thought experiment, kind of a mind bender. Imagine, he says, that the world's population suddenly shrinks, way down, say only 10,000 people left on the whole planet.
Wow, okay, that's getting apocalyptic.
Right. But you might think, hey, less people, less problems, right?
Yeah, fewer mouths to feed, less demand on resources, that sort of thing.
Exactly. But Hayek, he throws a curveball. He says even if these, let's call them survivors, they kept all our knowledge, all our technology, they'd still have a heck of a time maintaining our standard of living.
Wait, seriously? I'd figure fewer people would actually make things easier. Why would a smaller population struggle so much?
It boils down to specialization. That's the heart of it. See, in a world with only 10,000 people, you just wouldn't have enough folks to fill all those super specific, highly skilled jobs that a complex economy like ours depends on.
I never thought about it that way.
Right. Think about it.
Yeah.
To make something we totally take for granted, like your smartphone, there were people mining ore, designing microchips, assembling tiny parts, coding software. The list is huge.
Oh, for sure. It's mind-boggling when you break it down.
And without enough people to support that whole web of specialized work, our ability to innovate, to even make the stuff we rely on, it would be crippled.
So you're saying even with all the knowledge in the world, a tiny population just couldn't pull it off?
Exactly. It makes you appreciate how interconnected everything is, even on a global scale.
Absolutely. Like, I was just using my phone this morning, not even thinking about how many thousands of people, probably all over the world, were involved in making that happen. But hey, this whole specialization thing, it ties into another big Hayek idea, right? The extended order. Can you tell us more about that?
Absolutely. The extended order, it's Hayek's way of describing how this system, free markets, which can seem chaotic, driven by everyone just looking out for themselves, guided by prices, it somehow allows for a level of cooperation, of coordination that central planning could only dream of.
It's like counterintuitive almost.
Right. It's the idea that millions, Billions even of us, total strangers, we can work together, often without even realizing it, to make and share goods and services, and it's amazingly efficient.
All thanks to the invisible hand, right?
Exactly. This dance of supply and demand, always changing, always adapting to what people want, what's actually happening, it creates a system way more resilient, way more adaptable than any planning board stuck in some office building.
That's a powerful image. But of course, this whole debate about the best way to organize society, it always seems to circle back to wealth, how it's spread around, which is a huge point of disagreement between, well, socialism and capitalism, right?
Absolutely. And this is where Hayek, he gets at some really fundamental assumptions. He really takes issue with this whole language of redistribution. Like income is some pie sitting there that someone in charge gets to divvy up however they see fit. He saw it totally differently.
Oh, interesting. So how did he view income then?
To him, income, it's generated through that voluntary exchange in the market that
Yeah.
we were just talking about.
So instead of taking it from the haves to give to the have-nots, Hayek believed people earn their income by providing something of value to others, something other people actually want.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And he argued that forced redistribution, even when it's done with good intentions, trying to help people, it can backfire.
How so?
Well, he worried it could discourage people from working as hard, from taking risks, from starting those businesses, innovating. Basically, it could stifle the very thing that drives economic growth, which ultimately lifts everybody up in the long run.
So instead of just moving the existing wealth around, Hayek thought it was better to focus on creating an environment where everyone has the opportunity to create more wealth, to
Yeah.
prosper.
Precisely. Addressing the root causes of poverty, of inequality, not just the symptoms.
It's really interesting, this idea that instead of just trying to redistribute wealth, we should be focusing on creating a system where everyone has the chance to thrive and succeed on their own terms. But, these conversations about economic systems, the role of government, all that, they can get pretty intense, right?
Yeah, for sure.
People have strong feelings about this stuff. There's a lot at stake. And in those kinds of debates, it's easy to get caught up in the rhetoric, the slogans, and miss the nuances.
Oh, absolutely. And Hayek, he was really sensitive to that, how language itself can be used sometimes, honestly, to manipulate and mislead.
Right, like it can cloud our judgment. You're talking about those weasel words he warned us about, right? Remind us what he meant by that.
Yeah, so weasel words, for Hayek, these were terms, phrases that sound all nice and lofty, maybe even noble, but when you really try to pin them down, what do they actually mean? It gets fuzzy, slippery.
Like they're designed to be vague on purpose.
Exactly. And he thought these kinds of terms, they get weaponized in politics all the time to shut down real critical thinking, to push an agenda without having to actually define what that agenda is.
So it's not that the words themselves are bad, it's how they're used, how they can muddy the waters and prevent honest discussion.
Exactly.
Got any examples of these weasel words in action?
Of course. Think about terms like social justice, fair share. I mean, who doesn't want a more just society, right? Who doesn't want everyone to contribute their fair share?
Totally.
But then it gets tricky. What does social justice really require in practice? Does it mean absolute equality of outcome, even if that means sacrificing individual freedom? And who gets to decide what a fair share actually is?
It's like those terms, they sound good, obviously, but they can be used to justify almost anything if you don't define them.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And that was Hayek's worry, that without clear definitions, without real thought behind them, these well-intentioned phrases could be used to justify policies that end up doing more harm than good.
So it's like a smokescreen almost, preventing us from having real, nuanced conversations about complicated issues.
Exactly.
Because there are always trade-offs, right? There's no such thing as a perfect system.
100%. And that's why Hayek, he placed so much emphasis on critical thinking, on looking beyond the surface appeal of a catchy slogan or, any language designed to pull at your heartstrings.
To really examine things for yourself.
Exactly. Ask the tough questions, challenge assumptions, really think through the potential consequences of different policies, even especially when they're presented with all this feel-good language attached.
That's powerful. So as we wrap up this deep dive into the Fatal Conceit, what are some key things you hope our listeners will take away from Hayek's work?
At its heart, I think Hayek's message is one of humility. It's a reminder that even with the absolute best intentions, we humans, we're not all-knowing, right? Our ability to predict and control something as complex as society, as the economy, it's limited. He's urging us to be wary of these grand plans, these utopian visions,
Hmm.
recognizing that true progress, it often comes from unexpected places, for those countless individual choices, those decentralized actions.
From bottom up, not the top down.
Exactly. And maybe most importantly, he wants us to have these conversations about how we organize ourselves, how we build a better world, but to have them with intellectual honesty, with curiosity, with a deep respect for just how complex these issues really are.
It's a powerful message. It's a reminder that good intentions aren't always enough, that we need to be thoughtful to really understand the systems at play, the potential consequences, both good and bad. And as we wrap things up today, it really makes you think. If central planning is as potentially dangerous as Hayek argued, then what are the alternatives? How do we address these social challenges? How do we create a more just and prosperous world for everyone? It's a question worth wrestling with, and hopefully this deep dive has given our listeners some food for thought. Thanks for joining us.